All right. As you can tell, we have been decorating for Valentine's Day today. So that is what is on their mind this afternoon. I hope everybody is having a great Sunday afternoon. It is cold, so I hope everybody is staying warm. And we are just going to jump right into this. We're going to start in verse 16 and read through 18 of Ruth chapter 1. And then we will finish up chapter 1 next week and begin chapter 2. So let's begin with reading the verses, starting in verse 6. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her two daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, No, we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake, that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. Okay, there is a lot in those verses 6 through 18. And again, the thing that hits me hard is the relationship, like we talked about last week. The relationship that Ruth and Orpah had to have with Naomi. That they didn't want to leave her. That they wanted to stay. Even though they lost their husbands as well. There's nothing there for them if they stay with Naomi. But yet they are willing to stay with her. That just speaks volumes to me. So we're going to start in verse 6. And in verse 6, Naomi heard that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. I don't know how she heard. I don't know if it was gossip, if an angel, some say like maybe an angel came to her, or she heard a voice in her mind that maybe the Lord spoke to her. I don't really know. It doesn't tell us. It just said that she heard that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. This is when she knew the famine was over. And this is when Naomi decided she was going to go back home. There was nothing for her in Moab. She was going to leave. And like we said last week, Naomi had nothing. Nothing. There was no reason for her to stay in Moab. She had her daughters-in-law, but no one could take care of them. Could this be God's timing? Let's think about this. There was a famine, so Elimelech and his family left. When they left, Elimelech and her sons died. Now the famine is over. What does that mean? What is so significant that the famine being over? Naomi could go back to her hometown where she has friends, return to God's people, have food, and be taken care of. What perfect timing. What perfect timing that she had her family, and then there was this famine. All the family was together. They left. They didn't stick it out. They didn't stay where they were supposed to stay or where they could have stayed. They move. They die. Now the famine is over. When Naomi is in this desperate spot, she is in the mourning, she's in the grieving, she is having a hard time, she's lonesome. She needs people that care about her. And now, lo and behold, the famine is over. Is that not what Naomi needed right now? To be around people she knew and people who cared about her and can help her get through her grief? So that maybe this could ease the burden off of Naomi or Ruth and Orpah as well. I don't know. you can just see God's hand in all of this. And I had never thought about that point. Now the famine started, they left and all was well. Then they all died and now all of a sudden, bam, the famine's over. It's safe to go back home. I don't know, just kind of a neat little point. There are 3 options for widows at this time. So basically Naomi has 3 things she can do. And the first thing is widows usually return to their parents' home. This is what she urges Naomi and Orpah to do. Naomi must not have this option because she doesn't even consider it. So more than likely, Naomi's parents were dead. They were gone by this point in her life. So she could not go back to her parents' house. She could not go back and have her father take care of her and live under her father's roof. That's not an option for her. Number 2, the second option, she could remarry. But again, this was not an option for Naomi. And we see in the verses we just read when she tells Ruth and Orpah, it's not like I can have kids. It's not like I'm going to marry again and bear sons for you to marry. So she's past that age of remarrying. The reason for marriage was to bear sons. And Naomi is well past that point in her life. So a man would not even consider marriage with her. She was no value to a man. Because if you couldn't bear sons, there's no value of you. And honestly, back then, that was grounds for divorce. When you get to the age where you can no longer bear children, the man was done with you. That was all you were good for in the man's eyes. The third option for Naomi, she could support herself by working. But again, Naomi was too old for this. So this wasn't an option. So out of the 3 options, to return to her parents' home, remarry, or support yourself, she couldn't do any of them. So what was she to do? In verse 13, Naomi says the hand of the Lord is against her. We see this in Judges. When Israel rebelled and was punished for it, they would say that the hand of the Lord was against them. Naomi believed that the Lord was against her, which was why she encouraged Orpah and Ruth to stay and let her go. She thought she was cursed, so to speak, and she didn't want that she didn't want that to affect her daughters-in-law. She did not want her bad luck, if you will, to rub off on them. She thought her life was ruined, so she didn't want to ruin theirs as well. When they had the potential, they were young enough, they could remarry, they had the chance to have children. So she didn't want to ruin that for them. So even though she thought she was cursed, in verse 8, she still said, let the Lord deal kindly to her daughters-in-law. So even though she might be mad at God right now, she thinks she's cursed, she thinks God's mad at her, she thinks she's done something horribly wrong to deserve all this, that all this stuff is her fault. She still believes, because she still says in verse 8, Lord, deal kindly with my daughters-in-law. Treat them kindly, do them no harm, And that is why she encouraged them to leave. She wanted them to have a good life. She believed that only she was cursed, that she had done something, that her daughters-in-law were going to be fine. We see in verse 14 that Orpah left and Ruth stayed. Orpah leaving did not make her a bad person. It is what Naomi wanted. Orpah had a chance to find another husband and have children. She wanted that chance. Does that make her wrong? No. Does that make Ruth wrong for staying? No. This shows that everyone is different and both can be right dependent on the person you are. They had to do what was right for them at the time. Then we get to verse 16 and 17. And these are the verses that I will never forget. And most of you all know, if you ask somebody what verse do they know in Ruth, they're probably going to quote these 2 verses. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. This shows Ruth's love for Naomi. Oh, what it would be like if every mother and daughter-in-law had this love between them. This shows Ruth's selflessness. She is giving up her life for Naomi. How powerful is that? Could we do that for our mother-in-law? Would we even consider doing that for our mother-in-law? Ruth makes 3 promises in these verses that we just read. In verse 16 and 17, there's 3 promises. Promise number 1, Your people will be my people. Ruth is choosing to leave the Moabite life that she knows, because remember, her husband found her there. So she is a Moabite. She is choosing to leave the life that she knows and follow Naomi's people. This is a huge commitment. We know people who have made this commitment today, don't we? People who have chosen to, well, I'll just put me in this example. I lived in Kentucky my entire life until I married Matt. I chose to leave my life in Kentucky. I'm now in Mississippi. We were in Alabama. We chose to leave Alabama to come to Mississippi. I made those choices. I chose to leave my family behind. I chose to leave my friends behind. I chose to leave everything that I ever knew and move. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. What about, when I thought of this, I thought about people getting married. And one person is a Christian and the other is not. And the day that that non-Christian becomes a Christian, or when all of us become a Christian, don't we make a commitment to change, to leave that old life? This is what I thought about when it says, your people will be my people. We're starting over new. I'm going to be there for you. The second promise Ruth makes is, your God is my God. Giving up serving the Moabite idols and choosing to follow God. She is giving up all that she's ever known. Idol worship. She's giving it up. And that again makes me want to think the influence, the biblical influence, the spiritual influence that Naomi must have had on Ruth. There had to have been something there. And I think some of it could have been Elimelech too, her husband, her father-in-law, or it could have been her husband as well. Some one of those three had a strong influence for her to give up, showing her what she has been living her entire life was wrong, convincing her to give it up and to follow God. And we don't see it here, but I can just imagine the conversations, the family conversations they had, talking about the idols, talking about God and how they follow their God. And just like any couple today, I believe this, you believe that. Well, why do you believe that? Let's talk about it. Let's see what the Bible says. And I can just see Naomi and Elimelech having this discussion with their daughters-in-law and with their sons. And Ruth decides at this point in time, your God is my God. No longer am I going to worship the Moabite idols. The third promise that Ruth makes is, where you die, I will die. Simply meaning, I'm never going to leave you. I will go where you go. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to stay beside you. I'm never going to leave you. If we leave Moab and go somewhere else and we stay there and you decide to go to somewhere else, we'll go there too. I'm never going to leave you. Again, what relationship these two must have had. Could we be a Ruth? God used Ruth's faithfulness to impact Naomi's life for the better. He can and will use us to do the same for someone else's life. We need to let him work through us. Are you letting God work through you? And I'm going to leave you with that thought. Just think about letting God work through you this week. Next week, like I said, we will finish up chapter 1. We will go over verses 19 through 22, and we will see where that takes us. But more than likely, we will also start chapter 2. So I hope you all have a great week. And thanks again for listening. And I will see you all here next week.